in 1975, the New York City Board of Education, specifically the Foreign Language Bureau, decided to have a celebration of French Language Week. And when I saw that, I shared my concern and dismay with a colleague of mine, Rosa Maria Petanza, who was then the Italian Teachers Association's president. I was the president of the Italian Bilingual Educators Association. And I said, Rosemary, what do you think of this? And this is outrageous. I mean, they should be worrying about promoting Italian. After all, we only have about 10,000 students in Italian. They have about 170,000 in French. Why do they need to? Well, we decided to meet with Leo Bernardo, who was the director of foreign languages at that time, and expressed to him the same concern. And so he agreed that we should have an Italian language week. And he asked me, because I was working at the Central Board at the time, Angelo, would you be willing to undertake this and be the chairman of the committee? And I agreed. And instead of calling it Italian language, we should be broader. We call it Italian culture or Italian heritage culture week, because that's more encompassing. And so we called it Italian culture week. And it was not until the 80s, that 1984, I think, that George Ottomani proposed that we move it the week to October and make it a month to coincide with the Columbus Day celebrations. And that's what we did. And we then changed it to Italian Heritage and Culture Month, promoting the Italian language and culture and promoting a positive image of the Italian American community, and fighting the negative stereotypes that the media had been...
Exactly, because that was also the sort of beginnings of the Calandra Institute, that period. It was actually the beginnings of the late senator engaging in his first reports and investigations about, number one, the treatment of Italian-American professionals within CUNY, but also the high dropout rate, because at that time there was a very high dropout rate among high school dropout rate among Italian-Americans. I think it was somewhere around 25 or 26%. Yeah. So at the beginning it was very much tied to the school system. Yes. And then eventually it became a much more, I guess we might say, ecumenical activity that included the society or the community at large. But it's important also, I think, to underscore this, that it is not, quote unquote, New York City. It is New York in the general sense, that is surely statewide and even beyond New York, because my brief experience is that we've dealt also with New Jersey and Connecticut.
Beyond that too, because there've been celebration of Italian heritage and culture, for instance, in Boca Raton, in Florida, in San Francisco. There were other areas throughout that found out about this activity, and they organized their own celebrations.
Great, great. Some of the trials and tribulations then, and perhaps you can chime in also about some of the trials and tribulations now.
Well, I think what's very important, Anthony, is the fact that this is a volunteer committee. A volunteer committee of professionals such as Dr. Germundo, who was a school superintendent, myself in higher education, Dr. Schelze, who was connected formerly with Calandra Institute, now at the Italian American Museum. We have many distinguished people on the committee, an elementary school principal, Rosa Casiello O'Day. We have a lawyer. We represent everyone, and now, of course, including yourself on our board, which we appreciate. And so, as a group of volunteers, they're very dedicated. We meet consistently on the second Tuesday of every month. We're fortunate that the offices of the Italian Cultural Institute, which is next door to the office of the Consul General of Italy to New York, has afforded us the use of a very appropriate small-size office, but it works. And then we meet at that location. And all of these folks do it for free, whatever they do. And I think a very important part of not only this year's celebration, but in each of the years, we've dedicated ourselves to highlighting someone either here in Italy, former, past, present, or a theme. And each year, the theme has been so exciting that the high schools, the elementary schools pick up on it, the Office of the Consul General, the Office of the Italian Cultural Institute, and people become excited about it, and then other organizations want to buy into the theme.
In fact, one of the first things I noticed when I moved back to the Northeast to take this position, and I coincided with your 30th anniversary booklet, and as I was looking through that one wonderful page of all the posters, the first 30 posters, you can almost see an overall history of Italian culture, because I think Lorenzo da Ponte at one point is featured, William Paca is on one, opera is on, and various personages throughout Italian history, but also that Italian history that has also come to the United States. Let's talk a little bit about the posters, because they're fabulous in many ways. Aesthetically, they're done really well. Initially, how did you get the artist to do?
Okay, this is one of the tribulations. Actually, we got the idea of the poster because they had a poster, and that's how we found out about French Language Week, because they put out posters. So if they had a poster, we're going to have a poster. At minimum, we wanted from the very beginning to have the poster and the program of events, and that required money and funding. So we approached Fortune Pope, who in those days, very early, gave us a grant of $20,000. And so we were able to do a lot of things, including programs that went into the schools. For example, for Columbus celebration, we had packets that went to the schools helping teachers organize activities for Columbus for the centennial. And then when the funding ended, all of a sudden we had a problem, because now we had to go and search. And there was 1 year when I was desperate to find money to pay for the printing. Finally, we got a volunteer who donated the money to be able to do at least that. At one point, we tried to get the Italian government to really support the event in a big way. And they did. For 2 years, they got 7 regions to participate. It was called Italy on Stage. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs supported that event. And there were 7 regions that came and participated in all kinds of cultural events. We had the Teatro Stabile di Palermo and other Teatro Stabiles from whatever region they came from. We had the Tesori di San Gennaro, treasures of San Gennaro, which were magnificent. The life-size statues in silver that we displayed at the Brooklyn Museum were fabulous. Plus, in Sopranos and these programs that came from Italy were unbelievable.
And this was all donated by the Italian
They were all donated by the regions. Each region contributed one activity, and the central government. Unfortunately, at one point, there were critics, as there are in Italy. The taxpayer began to say, why are we supporting these things in America? We should support things in Italy, and so on. So that ended. But for those 2 years, they were fabulous. And as we move into the future, involve the Italian government to a greater extent to duplicate that sort of cultural contribution, and more active participation of the Italian regions or government.